Hi, this is ENX04, and today we're going to build a very simple overworld mob switch using a silverfish spawner. And I'll also showcase 4 other simple mob switch concepts for both the overworld and nether. These examples range from practical cases to interesting curiosities that are meant to inspire viewers to explore a broader range of possibilities in mob switch designs. Mob switches are essentially mass storage systems for a large number of hostile mobs that persistently count towards the mob cap. Building a mob switch and having it loaded will completely fill the mob cap and prevent the normal spawning of any further mobs anywhere else in the same dimension, giving you a game experience that can sort of feel like peaceful mode. Mob switches usually use one of 4 hostile mob types that have the special quality of not despawning when the player is more than 128 blocks away, while also counting towards the mob cap. These 4 special mobs are zombified villagers that have been previously traded with, shulkers, withers, and wardens. Dozens or hundreds of these mobs are created and then placed in lazy chunks so that the entities are not processed, and this minimizes the lag that the game would otherwise experience with potentially hundreds of trapped mobs. But here's the thing, any mob in a lazy chunk will not despawn. It's not just these 4 special mobs. You can use zombies, drowns, pillagers, magma cubes, or silverfish, or whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as the mob remains within a lazy chunk, it won't despawn due to distance from players because it's simply not processed, even though it still counts towards the mob cap. This trick has been known in the technical community for quite a while now, as far back as 1.17, and I'm a little surprised that a video has not already been made about this. Perhaps the main disadvantage to using lazy loaded mobs for mob switches is that you need to be careful not to accidentally despawn your stored mobs. So I'll review some basic concepts about chunk loading levels to help you choose an appropriate build site for your mob switch and to help protect it from accidental despawning. A Minecraft world is infinite, and there's no way for a PC or server to have the entire infinite world loaded and running at the same time due to limited computational resources. As a result, the game loads only some of the chunks in the world at any given time. The chunks that are around the player are of course loaded by the game so that the player can interact with the world. The range of chunk loading around a player can vary based on the server's view distance setting or the single-player render distance setting. All these chunks around the player, known as entity ticking chunks, will operate as expected, with the entities behaving normally and the redstone contraptions operating just like you would expect. However, the next layer of chunks outside of this region does not process the entities inside of them, and the next layer of chunks beyond that does not process redstone in addition to not processing entities. And any chunk beyond that layer isn't loaded by the game at all. These outer 2 layers that don't process entities are frequently called lazy chunks, and they always exist at the border around any entity ticking chunks. Just to make it easier to see everything, I've scaled down this illustration so that each chunk is represented by a single block. On servers, the default setting for view distance is 10, so this green entity ticking area goes out 10 chunks away from the player, in a square shape, and of course it has another 2 layers of lazy chunks around it. And besides players, there are another 2 important things that will load chunks around themselves in the game. One is the world spawn. This is the location in the overworld where players first arrive and that compasses point towards by default. And this loads a 19 by 19 area of entity ticking chunks around it, with another 2 layers of lazy chunks around the edges. The other thing that loads chunks is a nether portal, which will temporarily load a small 3 by 3 area of entity ticking chunks in the destination dimension for 15 seconds whenever an entity goes through the portal. And again, there are 2 layers of lazy chunks around the entity ticking area. Chunk loaders are just a pair of portals that pass entities back and forth between dimensions to mutually keep each other loaded. And mob switches commonly use chunk loaders for keeping mobs stored in the lazy chunks around a portal, just 2 or 3 chunks away from the chunk loader. And this also allows the mob switch to be easily turned on and off by simply activating or deactivating the chunk loader. The accidental despawning issue that I mentioned earlier is usually caused by a player wandering too close to a mob switch. The lazy chunk holding the mobs becomes an entity ticking chunk when the player is too close, and this usually causes the mobs to despawn since they'll be more than 128 blocks away from the player. So one way to prevent this is to choose a build site for the mob switch that is in a relatively boring place that nobody has any reason to visit. Depending on your situation, a convenient choice for this might be an unused stronghold, which has a silverfish spawner in the portal room. Every map has 128 strongholds, so there's a good chance that you'll be able to find a suitable one. Strongholds are easy to find using standard techniques like triangulation, and you can even use chunk base to help you locate one. This stronghold, for example, seems like a good choice. It's in the middle of a big ocean that I have no need to fly over or explore, and it's not too far from my base, so I can access the mob switch quickly by traveling through the nether to turn the mob switch on and off. So let's start building. When you find the portal room, immediately run to it and place water just past the iron bars to push away any silverfish, and set down a scaffolding block just before the iron bars to hold back the water. Break the block on the floor between the iron bars, remove the 2 iron bars at eye level, and place a line of 3 glass blocks across the entrance, and then remove the 3 iron bars over the glass. Extend the scaffolding so that it's 3 wide and 2 tall, and place 6 glass blocks alongside the scaffolding with an extra block in front, and clear out 2 layers of blocks overhead. If possible, it's best to use a silk touch pickaxe to break the blocks so that any infested blocks don't release silverfish. Jump up to the top of the glass and briefly place water next to the lava on the sides of the room to convert them into obsidian. Add 3 glass blocks over the scaffolding and another 3 glass blocks alongside. Pick up the water that you placed in the portal room, wait for the water to dissipate, and then place it down again in the same spot so that the water flows into the hole in the floor that you made earlier. When you're on top of the glass, the silverfish that spawn in the portal room will see you and enter the flowing stream of water that pushes them into the scaffolding. From here, they will climb up and become trapped in the upper layer of scaffolding, which acts like a one-way gate, since silverfish can only jump up, but not climb down. The scaffolding also prevents entity cramming for all the silverfish that will end up here, and it's far enough away from the spawner so that the spawner will continuously produce more silverfish. Be careful, many of the blocks around here will become infested with silverfish, so avoid attacking any silverfish because doing so will cause nearby infested blocks to break. Before we load any more silverfish into the mob switch, we should build the chunk loader. Stand over the scaffolding and press F3 and G to show chunk borders. From here, cross 2 chunk borders away from the portal room, tunneling if you need to, and construct a chunk loader. The chunk loader design that I'll be using here was independently derived by multiple people, including Mercury, Dark, and Scorpio. Build a portal frame and write down the X and Z coordinates of the portal when you're standing inside it. Step out of the portal and write down the direction that you're facing when looking at the portal opening. Place soul sand or netherrack blocks on the left of both sides of the portal frame and ignite the blocks. Now activate the portal and place glass over the fire so that you don't accidentally burn yourself and go through to the nether. You can use this portal in the nether to complete the chunk loader, but you'll probably find it more convenient to place the portal on the nether roof, assuming this is how you fast travel in the game. So, break the portal that you just came through and work your way up to the nether roof, for example using ladders and an ender pearl. Now take the X and Z coordinates that you wrote down earlier, divide each by 8 and round down. Set down a temporary block at this location, while facing the same direction as what you recorded earlier. Build a portal frame on top so that the temporary block is on the left when you look at the portal opening. Place a dispenser facing up next to the temporary block, and replace the temporary block with a hopper pointing into the dispenser. Add a lever and redstone torch to the side of the dispenser, and place a block on top of the redstone torch. Place a detector rail over the dispenser, and temporarily place any rail on the block next to it, so that the detector rail slopes downwards towards the portal frame. Set a hopper minecart on the detector rail and push it so that it clips into the frame of the portal, and then ignite the portal, and set a glass block over the detector rail. Now load 3 ordinary minecarts into the dispenser, and toggle the lever to initialize the chunk loader. Set down a block so that you can hop into the chunk loader portal, and return to the end portal room. Secure the space around you so that mobs can't sneak up on you, and continue collecting silverfish by standing on top of the glass. The number of silverfish that you'll need depends on the maximum number of players that you have on your server. The mob cap can be as high as 70 mobs per player, so if you have 5 players on your server, for example, you'll need 350 silverfish in the mob switch to make sure that the mob cap stays full. This spawner will let you trap about 350 silverfish for each hour that you wait here. You can monitor the number of silverfish in the trap by looking down at the scaffolding and pressing F3. Look for the number of entities shown in your field of view, which provides a good estimate for the number of silverfish. When you have enough silverfish accumulated, leave the stronghold through the chunk loader portal, and be sure to tell the other players on the server where the mob switch is located, so that they can avoid coming too close to the mob switch in the overworld. You can turn the mob switch on and off using the lever on the chunk loader. Turning it off can be useful when you want mobs to spawn, like when you want to run a general mob farm, for example. And if your server picks up new players, you can safely return to the portal room to add more silverfish by going through the chunk loader portal. Just remember that while you're in the stronghold, silverfish will slowly despawn if you're more than 32 blocks away from them, and they will instantly despawn if you wander more than 128 blocks away. When you restart the game or server, the mob switch will not be loaded, even with the chunk loader running, because the game doesn't keep track of which chunks were loaded before it had shut down. As a result, you'll need to return to the chunk loader in the nether if you want to restart it. You may be wondering whether you can use a different type of spawner for a mob switch, and you can. From a technical perspective, it's easily possible, but most other types of overworld spawners are usually discovered by exploring caves or mines, and this means that the mob switch would not be located in a boring place that you have no reason to visit. This makes it much more likely that you or another player will accidentally come too close to the mob switch when you go to explore the area further. But don't let me stop you from exploring other options. I evaluated many different strategies for this video, and honestly, it was really fun trying such a variety of different mobs that can be used in mob switches. I'll leave you with a few clips of 4 other options that I had considered. 2 of these are for the overworld, using lazy loaded pillagers and VEXES, and 2 are for the nether, using shulkers and wardens. Lazy loaded mobs that can despawn are generally not a good choice for mob switches in the nether dimension, because you would need to travel extremely far in the overworld to turn the chunk loader on or off, or to reload it after restarting the game or server. This is due to the factor of 8 in distance between dimensions, and it's also way too easy for a player to accidentally come too close to the mob switch in the nether, causing mobs to despawn. I've added a world download so that you can check these out and learn a bit more about them in the epilogue and video description, which you should always check before starting a build, just to get the most up-to-date information. Before I go, I'd like to thank my Discord community for offering some great feedback on the drafts of this video. One of those comments is to remind viewers that some mobs don't follow the normal spawning mechanics, like phantoms, zombie piglins that spawn in portals, and mobs that spawn as part of structures. These examples are just some of the mobs that will still appear even with the mob switch enabled, so don't be surprised if you see them. Well, that's all for today. I hope this video brings you peace in your world and perhaps inspires you to explore new possibilities in mob switches. Thanks for watching. When you start a raid at a pillager outpost, the pillagers that spawn will immediately join the raid, which removes them from the mob cap, allowing for hundreds or thousands of pillagers to spawn. The pillagers are trapped in scaffolding to prevent entity cramming. They're drawn here by group aggro, like the way that zombie piglins behave. When a single pillager is hit by a snow golem snowball, they all rush in to retaliate. The scaffolding also acts like a one-way mirror, allowing the snow golem to see the pillagers and shoot at them, but not vice versa. To return the pillagers to the mob cap, break the composter to end the raid, and then reload the mobs by leaving through the chunk loader while it's turned off, and then returning to the outpost. VEXES can teleport and will continue pathfinding to the coordinates of their last target, even though they've changed dimensions. And this means that they'll fly away from the portal until they reach a lazy chunk, which prevents them from dying and despawning. The player should avoid going to the overworld side of the mob switch so that VEXES don't get a chance to fly any further. This is my instant shulker farm, and it provides the duplicated shulkers for a mob switch in the nether dimension. I've replaced the grinder in the nether with a simple portal that just holds all the shulkers that teleport in. You should size the portal opening based on the number of shulkers that you need, so that they don't entity cram. Aim to have each portal block hold about 10 shulkers on average. For example, this portal has an opening of 9 blocks in size, and can hold about 90 shulkers before some of them start to die from cramming. Up to 20 attempts are made to spawn a warden in the 11 by 13 by 11 region around a shrieker, at the highest valid space in a selected column. Surround the shrieker with wool temporarily while you build the platform, and place a portal directly over the shrieker so that the warden will be lured into it as it sniffs around to find the player. Once teleported, the warden will trap itself in scaffolding as it's lured to the repeating sound of the trapdoor, which also prevents the wardens from burrowing away.